Question Time decided to have an exclusive debate night specifically geared towards the immigration debate, and there were some decent panel members on there. We had Zia Yusef from Reform, we had Daisy Cooper from the Lib Dems, we had Zach Polanski from the Greens, Mike Tapp, because I think the thing was hosted in Dover and he's the MP for Labour down there, and we had a kind of nondescript Tory on the panel there to give their points of view. Now, it did get a little bit heated at times, quite entertaining, and it seemed like at the start there were like a couple of kind of right-wing friendly questions, but as the night progressed there was rapturous applause for Zach Polanski and Daisy Cooper. So I think, although Question Time was trying to position the audience in terms of, oh, this is a fair cross-section of the community, I don't think it was, and I think they slipped up. There was also a few moments where they asked asylum seekers to speak, but they were highly left-wing, and I think within that we see exactly why Labour and some of these other parties want to bring these people in, because they're importing left-wing voters, essentially.
What the Labour government has done, over 70,000 people have arrived in the United Kingdom illegally since Labour came to power, 50,000 in the last 12 months. That is up 40% year on year relative to the Tory record, which was already a disaster. And notice the very smart sleight of hand that the immigration minister from Labour uses when he talks about 50,000 deportations and removals. Shall we talk about those 50,000, Mike?
Go for it.
A very tiny fraction of those are actual deportations, i.e. enforced
That's
removals.
Why I said removals. That's why I said
so
removals.
Will you accept then that over half of those 50,000 are what's known by the Home Office as other verified returns, which means the government literally didn't even know they were leaving until after they had left. Okay, do you know what percent? Okay, Mike, genuine question. Mike, genuine question.
Go.
What percentage of the people who have come here illegally under Labour have been deported?
Look, what's really important...
No, please answer my question.
What's really important
what
is
percentage of those 70,000 have been deported?
50,000 have been deported since we came to power.
What percentage of the 70,000 who have come here illegally?
You can do the maths of 70,000
that Mike is pretending to not know or actually doesn't know. The answer is 27. The answer is 2,700 people. Just 4% of the people who have arrived here illegally under Keir Starmer's awful government have been deported. That means 96% are still here. So it's no coincidence that these people are streaming across the channel on a daily basis. Britain is a soft touch, and what Labour has done is pour gasoline on a fire that the Tories created. It is totally unfair on British people, and by the way, I include legal migrants within that equation. It is totally unfair. People are furious about it, and for you to sit here and gaslight people with fake numbers, which the Home Office does, Shabana Mahmood does time and again, I think is totally unacceptable and insulting to British people's intelligence.
Do you want to answer that briefly before I come?
I will be brief on this. Look, we're not a soft touch, and you've seen from the sweeping reforms to the system over the last few weeks is the largest since the Second World War. When it comes to the number of deportations and removal, what Zia is doing there is he's splitting hairs, and the reason he's doing that is he understands fully that it takes time to process a claim. We've increased that by 50% so that it's quicker, so we can remove people who shouldn't be here and help those that need it.
And this is what people have done throughout history. They have fled because they've moved because of war or persecution, or they've moved because of people they love or that they want to travel.
And do you think there should be any limits on those numbers? Judging from your manifesto, you don't.
Well, I think we need to be really clear about the numbers. This year, 800,000 people have arrived in this country. 400,000 of them have come to study. 300,000 of them have come to work and are a net contribution to our tax system.
Yes, but that's answering a different question.
Well,
the question I'm asking you, Zach, is do you believe, because judging from what the Greens say, though quite often you shy away from it for saying it in public, but what is written down is that you believe in a world without borders, therefore anyone who wants to come should be able to come. Is that correct?
So what's important to know is that when we talk about those numbers, we're talking about a policy for a sustainable society.
Okay, you haven't actually answered that.
I'm answering you right now. This is about what it looks like in the future. Yes, in an ideal world, that is the policy I would want. I recognise, though, we are not in an ideal world. We're in a world where the world is in turmoil. We know that we have huge issues in our country. But the issues with the National Health Service, the issues with the lack of council homes, the issues with the society feeling broken are not the issues of migrants or someone who is clinging to a small boat. They are the issues of 14 years of Conservative austerity, continued by a Labour government who say this is an island of strangers, but actually, you're a government of cowards because you won't tell people the truth about migration. And the truth about migration migration. It is a positive thing for this country. We need migration. We need fair and managed migration. And that's what will change this conversation.
Woman there.
In terms of broad strokes, let me be clear. If you're entering a war zone, it's generally men first. If you're fleeing a war zone, it's generally women and children first. And the vast majority of the people coming to this country via the English Channel illegally are men. That is a statistical fact. And when people talk about language, I don't know what language people are objecting to. I'm dealing with statistics, I'm dealing with data, and I think that's a sensible way to formulate policy. And I think we should use language clearly. I think we should use language accurately
but just
and
to be specific, Zia, because the reform policy is to deport all illegal immigrants in the UK within 5 years. So that would be, I mean, these are real people. That would be someone like you. And that's what you're saying, right?
If you are in this country illegally, let me be crystal clear. If Nigel Farage is our next Prime Minister, and that's obviously what we're working to deliver, if you're in this country illegally, you will be deported back to the country from which you came. Over 170,000 people have arrived in this country illegally since 2018. Most of that work was done by the Tories, sadly, and that is more people than arrived on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. I have used the word invasion before, and people might object to that term, but the dictionary definition of an invasion is an unwanted incursion into a space of land. And I don't know what to describe it. 170,000 people arriving. By the way, what are the countries from which they are coming? They're coming from Syria, they're coming from Afghanistan, they're coming from Iraq, they are coming from Iran. Not countries that have a track record of having Britain's interests at heart.
A reform government wouldn't just be throwing out people who have arrived here through irregular routes. They want to rip up indefinite leave to remain. People who have come to this country, who have earned their right to be here, who are granted leave to stay in this country, they want to throw out all of those people, ripping apart families, bringing chaos into our economy and our sector, and doing something which I believe fundamentally is really un-British. Now, on the question about men coming here, I mean, this is just a straightforward fact. The reason why men often arrive in the UK on their own is because the journey is just too dangerous for women and children. When women and children go on that journey, when they're leaving a place of war and persecution, they can be subject to rape, kidnap, trafficking and slavery. And therefore often men come in advance in order the family can follow them. And that's documented by migration groups. But if I could just finish and come to the question that Paul asked right at the very beginning. I think, Paul, your question tapped into this enormous frustration that British people have on this issue. They've heard slogans. There's been caps, migration caps that have never been met. There are so many broken promises. And I think the British people, the silent majority of British people are crying out for politicians to come up with practical solutions.
Well, let's 2 or 3, 4 people who want to come along who are in that situation. And I know you are. So you, because I talked to you beforehand, you came from Iran. I just wonder what you think of this idea, because one thing that the government is talking about is if, and a number of parties are, if the countries are safe, they become safe once you have left them, in your case, Iran.
Okay.
Would you be then happy to go back?
Well, there's 2 points which we need to take care about them. First of all, okay, physically, if Iran is safe, the regime change, there is a regime change in Iran, okay, that's safe for people like me to go back to Iran. But the second thing, which we need to take care about it, is, for example, for me, I have a 4-month-old daughter, so she born here, and she's growing up here. She will growing up here, learning English, learning how to read and write English, and she won't know how to read and write Farsi or even speak Farsi.
So you wouldn't want to go back with your family?
Yeah, even after, let's say, after 5 years, a government from Mr. Zia reform, which came originally from a migrant family, came tell me to go back to your country. What will happen to my daughter? Do you think this is
I'll happily answer that question. My parents came here legally. They did not come here illegally. And look, there's a clear dividing line in British politics. If you're watching this at home and you want to vote for a party that will prioritise the interests of foreign nationals who came here illegally, or do you want to vote for a party that are going to prioritise British citizens who work hard, set their alarm clocks in the evening before going to bed and toil to pay tax money?
That is not the dividing line. That is not the dividing line in British politics right now.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayer
had to pay? There are other choices available.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayers had to pay for universal credit payments alone for foreign nationals last year? That was £10 billion.
Do you know how much an asylum seeker gets a week?
Hang on, if you're talking, no one can hear.
£49 a week. £49 a week. This is what this man wants to take off you.
29, British taxpayers will be spending half the forecast defence budget on universal credit alone for foreign nationals. There's nothing about that that's remotely acceptable, and I'm sorry, we will stick up for British citizens who paid their taxes.
In 2017, there was not a single asylum seeker who arrived on a boat. Durham University did the research. 2017, not a single person.
How many have arrived since
Today
then?
we have 46,000 a year. And do you know why? It was because of the botched Brexit deal pushed through by Boris Johnson, championed by Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage should be here tonight apologising to the British people.
But Mike says he wants to deport the sex offenders, and absolutely I agree with him. But one of the reasons we can't always deport them is because of the ECHR and the obstructions it puts in place. There are people who...
The European Convention on Human Rights.
They use claims to the right to family life to stop us from deporting them.
4 cases.
And you have to also remember that Labour MPs, including Keir Starmer, wrote letters when we were in office to the Home Office campaigning to stop us deporting foreign national offenders. You know, so that you just can't trust them on this issue.
Mike, you said that the waiting list in the services are due to migration. That is a fallacy. Mr. Yusef, you talked that there are enough people in the United Kingdom to not need foreign doctors. I joined the NHS as a student in 1974. We've been totally reliant on doctors from Asia initially, and the care sector is totally dependent on care workers from abroad, despite 9 million people not being in work. One reason why people wait for GPs is certainly because the population has gone up, but equally because there's funding for general practice compared to funding for hospital sectors has gone down. So you're conflating lots of different things to state your argument. But my question to you is, you have said, I believe, that migrant workers will lose their indefinite right to live here.
Indefinite leave to remain.
So sorry, I got the wording wrong. So if you've worked as a care worker in a nursing home for 40 years, you're already, since last year, not allowed to bring your children over. So when you get to 65, you're going to be sent back to where you came from. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, it's not at all. And if you had paid attention to what we were announcing, you would not have that view. My mother is a care home worker. My mother is a care home worker.
Typically rude.
My mother is a care home worker.
Be polite to people at the same time. They're not decent.
Has worked in care homes for years. We have announced that we would have an acute skills shortage visa specifically for sectors like the care home sector. But here's what has not happened. Here's what has not happened. And again, I know the care home sector well because my mother has worked in it for years, and I know how hard those people work. What happened under the Boris Johnson era is millions of people came to this country. The vast majority came not to work. They came here on non-work visas. Over 80% came on visas other than work visas.
What I hear from a lot of people is they are very scared about this rising intolerance. The debate about immigration and asylum is spilling out into a broader thing where people of colour who are born and bred in the UK are being told that they should go home. And I've heard this in my own constituency, and people are very scared. As a British society, we should be proud that we are diverse, we are tolerant. I think we need to be more inclusive. I think we do need to make sure that communities are supported so that integration is got right. But I think the vast majority of people in the country, the silent majority, will embrace our proud tradition of welcoming those who flee war and persecution, but at the same time they are slightly worried about integration and they want support in their communities to be able to do that. So we should be able to do both things, but we have got to make sure that our political debate and our public debate is inclusive and calm and tolerant so that we don't have this rising fear and intolerance.
Zia.
Look, these arguments nationally have already concluded. 70%, according to the latest YouGov poll, say immigration is too high in this country. Immigration is the #1 salience issue by which people vote, and the majority of people in this country support mass deportations, despite this particular audience's views. Those are the facts. The only party that will deliver that, and there will be people watching this programme at home whose blood will be boiling, frankly, by what they've seen.
Hang on, Zia. No, wait 1 minute. There are plenty of people in this audience who have supported your views. Did you not hear them?
Let me finish my point. Well, we got huge rounds of rapturous applause for open borders. We got that multiple times.
How about you stop misrepresenting my positions here?
I will say this.
If you're so strong in your position, why do you need to misrepresent?
If you want immigration law in this country to be upheld, if you think Britain should have secure borders, and if you want a sensible immigration policy that allows people who are going to come here and contribute and deport people who are here illegally, then you should vote reform. 1 in 3. The last thing I'll say is this. This week we found out 1 in 3 school pupils
Reform
in
do
Glasgow.
Not want to solve this.
1 in 3 school pupils in Glasgow.
Let him answer.
1 in 3 school pupils in Glasgow do not speak English as a first language. I empathise with what Kieran just said, that anecdote you just told. Sadly, it was your party that brought about that entire situation. If you want Britain to have secure borders, if you want immigration law to be upheld finally, and British people voted time and time again through Brexit and 4 consecutive elections for less immigration, and instead we have this panel
don't trust the angry man who doesn't listen. He doesn't listen at all. He's an angry man. He wants this to carry on. He needs this division.
Is that why your party's polling at 14%?
All right.
I'll allow you to formulate your own opinions about what you thought went down. If you're listening to this channel, then it's highly likely that you're on the right of politics, because that's generally all I talk about. So I'm gathering that you are a right-winger if you are listening to me. And if you are, you would have liked what Zia Yusef said. And, I thought in general, looking at that debate stage and just being really fair about it, Zia Yusef was more aggressive than normal. As you saw in that clip there, he just shut that audience member down. Now, they made a big deal of that and they were gasped as, oh, Zia Yusef had a go at that man. And you know what? I think it's high time that they started to do that. These audience members that they get on here, they mouth off, and this isn't a debate. And I don't think Zia was being too nasty to the man, saying, well, why are you asking me this question? You obviously haven't read our manifesto, so perhaps you want to do a bit more research before you waste my time with this question. And of course, Mike Tapp clutching his pearls. I thought that was brilliant. I thought Zach Polanski was shown for the open border lunatic and activist that he is. He finds it very, very difficult to be normal. He's got to have this style where he's banging up and down on his soapbox. He's always doing that. And I think it's very off-putting to the voter generally. And I don't know why there were rapturous applause every time he spoke, although obviously we do because it was on the BBC. I thought Daisy Cooper was slightly aggressive when people were talking, and she didn't really get her message across. She was talking about empathy all the time and, how kind the British people are, and I think that line is well and truly gone now. I think that ship has sailed. All of this tolerance, compassion, and, Britain needs to be seen as a beacon for all this so the whole world can come and stay with us. No, this is an old argument, and I think people are getting really fed up with British people are compassionate. I don't want to be compassionate anymore. I want my country back, and I'm sick of people like Daisy Cooper lecturing me on compassion. It's compassion to prevent people coming to this country and 250,000 young girls being raped and murdered. That would be compassion to me, not talking this nonsense about, letting in whoever wants to turn up on our show. And I think the arguments that she was putting forward were frankly out of date, just to be blunt about that. I thought Mike Tapp looked like a vulnerable child, and he's not a good communicator, and tries he might have a good fight. He couldn't do it, and he didn't really get Labour's points across at all. And to finish on the Tory, I think he done all right. He was quite straightforward, leave the ECHR and all of that. But, looking at all of these panel members in the round, I think it was a great representation of where we are in British politics at the moment. You've got the established class here centering around the Labour Party, halfway between Labour and the Lib Dems. You've got the Tories here who are in no way forgiven for the 14 years, and particularly the Boris wave, and the man mentioned that a few times on there. You've got the lunatic left with Zach Polanski, who was asked a number of times about open borders and dodged the question. He didn't even have the balls to stand up and own it. Just such a weak man, and he just looks unkempt, unshaven, and it's not the fact the man has a beard, but you can tell when there's no kind of looking after your beard. He just looked scruffy. His shirt looked scruffy, and this is how he positions himself to the nation, completely unelectable. And I thought, when you're looking at Reform's position, they're getting a little bit sick and tired of how the BBC and everyone's trying to position them. And I think they are cutting through. And, Daisy Cooper talking about silent majorities. I thought that was majorly gaslighting, because if there's any silent majority in this country, I think most people are behind reform and, stopping all of the legal migration and indefinite leave to remain needs to go out of the window. But as you look at those arguments, I think the political class in general, certainly three of those, minus the Tories and Reform, looked out of date to me and off kilter with how a majority of this people feel. This liberal media establishment, this elite establishment, which is so focused on replacing our population at the moment, is out of touch in every way. And a decent programme, I would say, because, you walked away from that there, you walked away from Question Time knowing exactly what the party stood for and, where you should be voting dependent on where your particular bias is. And I will say bias there, because we all have a little bit of bias, don't we? But an enjoyable debate, quite heated, got nasty at times, but that's what it's all about, politics. We need more of this in our debate, not less, in my opinion. Thanks very much for your time.